The bride claimed age 27. She was 63 and owned the bank he worked for. The envelope came on a Tuesday. I remember because the mail arrived the same day. I'd been passed over for branch manager the second time, and I was still standing at my desk with that particular humiliation fresh when Dolores set the thing on my blotter without a word. Cordell Savings and Trust, private correspondence. Our own letterhead, which made no sense because I was inside the building. I turned it over. My name on the outside in handwriting I didn't recognize, not the scratchy clerk's hand I knew from every internal memo, but something deliberate, the loops of a person who'd been taught penmanship by someone who meant it. I set it down and didn't open it until after closing. My name is Walt Pruitt. In 1887, I was 51 years old and had worked for Cordell Savings and Trust in Wichita Falls for going on 11 years. Loan officer. I knew every acre of collateral in 4 counties, knew which men were lying and which were just desperate, knew the difference. And I was good at the work in the way that quiet men sometimes are, competent and unremarkable, which amounts to the same thing as invisible in most establishments. The bank's owner was a name in a ledger. E. Cordell, principal. The man who ran the day-to-day, Harlan Vogt, was the one who shook hands and took lunches and told me twice now that the manager's position required someone with, and here he'd pause, like choosing a word carefully, when what he was really doing was choosing a word carefully, presence. I understood what he meant. I was 51 and looked it. Not broken down, not wasted, but worn the way a good tool gets worn, worked smooth in the places that mattered, unremarkable to anyone who didn't know what they were looking at. The envelope. Inside was a single card, dining room of the Drovers Hotel, Saturday at 7, E. Cordell. I almost didn't go. I told myself I would, changed my mind twice between Thursday and Saturday, put on my good coat at 6:45, and walked the 6 blocks in October cold with my hands in my pockets, wondering what a man says to the owner of the place that just passed him over. The dining room was quiet for a Saturday. The hostess brought me to a corner table where a woman was already seated. She was, I don't know how to say this right, and I've had 38 years to practice saying it. She was 60-something and looked it, the way a woman looks when she's lived a full life in sun and weather and hasn't spent much energy pretending otherwise. Silver hair pinned up, good dress, dark green wool, strong hands on the table, the kind that have worked. She stood when I approached, didn't wait for me. "Mr. Pruitt," she said, "Elsa Cordell." I said something polite, sat down. The waiter appeared and disappeared. "I read your loan assessments," she said before I had the chance to say anything at all. "All of them going back 8 years. I didn't know what to do with that, so I waited. You turned down Harlan's brother-in-law in '82 on a cattle loan. $3,000. She'd folded her hands on the table. Harlan wanted the loan approved. You wrote 14 pages explaining why it was a bad risk. The collateral was inflated, I said. By about 40%, she nodded. The man defaulted 2 years later with another lender, $4,200. A pause. I know because I track it. The waiter brought bread. Neither of us touched it. You've been passed over twice, she said. Yes, ma'am. Does that seem right to you? I looked at her across the table. There was something in the question, not a trap, not a test I was supposed to perform correctly. She was asking because she wanted to know what I thought, and the directness of it caught me off guard in a way that Harlan Vogt's slick management had never managed. No, I said, it doesn't. She picked up her water glass. Good, I'd have worried about you if it did. We talked for 2 hours. Or she asked, and I answered, and then she answered, and I found myself asking back, about the bank, about how she'd come to own it, about the territory she'd grown up in, which turned out to be 40 miles west of where I'd grown up. The same red dirt country, the same particular shade of sky in August. Her husband had founded the bank in '71 and died in '76, and she'd run it since, quietly, through Vogt, whom she'd inherited along with the building and the ledgers and the habit of being underestimated. Why Vogt? I asked, which was probably too direct. Because I'm a woman, she said simply without complaint. In 1876, a woman didn't sign the papers. She worked through a man and kept her name out of the dealings. I was practical about it. She looked at me. I'm less practical now. There were advertisements in the paper at that time. I don't know if you remember this if you're old enough for correspondence marriage. Women placing notices, men writing in. The joke in the office that fall, Harlan's joke, was about a widow who'd advertised and taken 10 years off her age, said she was 27, and the man who came to meet her found a grandmother. Harlan thought it was very funny. I'd laughed along because that's what you do. I thought about that joke sitting across from Elsa Cordell, who had not taken 10 years off anything, who had told me her age by the second glass of water, 63, same as the century, and I thought, a man would have to be a fool not to see what's in front of him. It took 6 months. In November, she removed Harlan Vogt as day-to-day manager and offered me the position. I said yes. In December, she had dinner with me again, this time at the house she kept on the north side of town, and I met her daughter and her daughter's husband and her 2 grandchildren, and the daughter looked at me across the pot roast with an expression I recognized as sizing up, and I bore it the way you bear a thing that's fair. In February, she came by the bank on a Monday afternoon, not unusual. She came in twice a week now, openly, no longer running anything through a proxy. And she stopped at my office door and looked at me for a moment in a way that had something in it I hadn't seen directed at me in a long time. "You're good at this," she said. "Not the job." I knew she didn't mean the job. "At what?" I said because I wanted to hear it. "At being steady," she said. "People lean on steady. It's rarer than they think." I stood up from my desk. The afternoon light was coming through the west window, and it caught the silver in her hair, and I crossed the room, and she didn't move back. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. She put her hand against my chest, flat, the way you check if something is solid. "I know," she said. "That's why I'm here. We married in April." The joke went around, as it does in a small city. I was aware of it. The widow who owned the bank, the loan officer she'd elevated and then married, people had their theories, which all amounted to he got something out of it. I let it go. I knew what was true, and so did she, and the people whose opinion mattered had been at the ceremony. Her daughter warmed to me by summer. The grandchildren called me Walt. I kept the manager's job for 16 years and ran it the way Elsa would have run it herself if the world had been built to allow it. Careful, fair, a 14-page report when the numbers didn't add up. She sat on the board. She knew every loan I made before I filed it. We argued twice about risk, and both times she was right, which I told her, and she told me the same when I was. There is a particular thing about being known by someone who has seen the books. Elsa Cordell had read 8 years of my work before she sat down across that table from me, and what she found there was worth a dinner, and then another dinner, and then 31 years. I am 82 years old. She died 4 years ago, and I am still in the house on the north side of town, and on the wall across from my chair there is a photograph from that April wedding, and in it she is standing beside me with her hand in the crook of my arm, and she is not looking at the camera. She is looking at me. The way you look at something you chose on purpose. Something you knew the worth of and were not wrong.